If I sign a contract in business right now, that contract is ironclad. I have to know when I sign that contract that contract, I have to assume that contract can't change. And it's impossible to change this contract. Maybe things could change. Maybe I can get lucky and change it in the future if I want to. But as of right now, when I sign this contract, it's ironclad. What's your overall thoughts on Masvidal and Jon Jones asking for more money so soon after they signed a new contract? Are they in the right for that 100%, or do you believe more about the contract signing and the obligation to that? What's your thoughts?
Well, Mike Swick, you have always been a company man, and I got to tell you,
but that's out of it, though. I have been. I've always. You're right about that. I've always been a company man because I'm appreciative of what I got and from where I came from. But out of that, I think I do make sense with what I say, because a contract is a contract, and we don't know what the UFC spends. Everyone thinks the UFC is this now, well, especially when it sells for $4 billion, it's this gigantic company that has all this money, and you want to get that money. But you got to understand, the UFC sold for $4 billion or whatever right now. It's not the same UFC as when the Fertittas had it.
No, it's not.
So now you have owners that are in debt $4 billion. So like I was asking another guy I had on the podcast before, Kung Lee, actually, who's in court against the UFC, say you do win a lawsuit against the UFC, the Ali Act and the monopoly or whatever this case is. Now you're battling a company that's in debt $4 billion and just trying to survive. It's not the same as the old UFC. Now, what happens if you do hurt them, like you cripple them, or you possibly cause them to go bankrupt or something? What is that going to do to the overall sport? And that can trickle into Bellator and trickle into Ryzen and ONE FC and all these other organizations, because all the organizations have a role in building the sport and doing things. So I'm kind of tossed with that. So biased aside or whatever, or company man aside, I feel like I have logical points, and I want to get your points on those as well.
Okay, so in a free market industry, right?
Yeah.
If the UFC folds, so be it. You have Bellator, and I'm not being biased. I'm being 100% direct. Right. You have Bellator, you have ONE, you have Ryzen, and there will be other promotions that rise up from the bottom to take their place. Sure, maybe they won't be what the UFC is now with the connections that they have now, but in the free market industry, that's exactly what is meant to happen. Okay, so when you give that reason, like, oh, those fighters will all find a home. They will. There's 3 other organizations that are that you could say are pretty damn good, and not even. Oh,
but
sorry,
you think Bellator
can
pay? You think Bellator can pay? I mean, I love Bellator. I have nothing against Scott Coker. Bellator is a great organization. No. Do you think Bellator can pay Jon Jones money and Masvidal money though?
So look, absolutely.
Not because they're a bad organization, but it takes time to get to that level, right? The UFC's been there long enough to get that money.
I'm not even talking about just Bellator. I'm talking about ONE. ONE can pay him that money.
You think ONE
can pay it? Yes, absolutely. Eddie Alvarez left. He fought out his contract and he left. He got paid triple what he was making in the UFC. Triple.
Yeah, but Jon Jones money, dude, that's like $5 million plus.
I do agree with what you're talking about. The Jon Jones money, the Masvidal money, the Nate Diaz money, all that you are right. That is a lot of money. Yeah. Okay? But you also have to think, though, in terms of, look, if those guys did leave, let's just say the UFC decided not, and those guys did leave, they would generate more money for that organization in long term.
But the question is, so Bellator is a business, the UFC is a business. Considering Dana White didn't, put a gun to these guys' heads and make them sign these contracts, Masvidal and Jon Jones, do you consider him a bad person because he won't budge from his contract? I mean, he's just sticking to what the contract says. He's not changing the contract. He's not saying, or the UFC, maybe not Dana specifically, but the UFC is not budging from their contract is all they're doing. So you signed a contract and they're just saying you signed the contract, it's staying the way it is. So you can't go to Bellator, you can't go to these other places. You can either fight or you don't have to fight. It is what it is. Do you think they're wrong for that? Or do you, it's not considering the fact they're not trying to change it or do anything different, whereas these guys, Jon Jones and Masvidal, are trying to change what they signed. That's the question. Are they doing something wrong or not?
Yeah, I don't think Dana's doing the wrong thing. What I do think is this. There's a couple things that you brought into play in this situation. In this, there's hidden questions in there. Okay, one is, first off, when you were fighting, it was 3 and 4 fight contracts.
Right.
Now it's 6 and 8 and sometimes 10 fight deals. Okay, so when the UFC had bought Strikeforce, Dana had said, or not Dana, but the UFC had hit me up and said, no, we want you to sign a 6 or 8 fight deal. I was like, absolutely not.
Right.
There's no way. I'm going to sign a 4 fight deal. I plan on being the champion. I plan on being in that number 1 contender spot, whatever it is. And I want to renegotiate my money. I renegotiated going in, even though I only had one. I think I had 1 or 2 more fights left on my contract. I think I had 1 more fight left on my contract, and I renegotiated going into that. So when I renegotiated, they wanted me to sign a 6, and they actually asked for an 8, and I said absolutely not. And they said, okay, 6. And I was like, no. I said, it's a 4-fight deal. I plan on being around champion. I want to be the champ. So that all being said, I signed a 4-fight deal. And I'm thankful that I was able to do that, or that I did do that. These other guys are not being given that option.
So you did the right. So what I'm seeing is what you did the right thing for what you wanted to do, and I would think that John Jones and Masvidal, instead of being in the position that they're in right now, they should have done what you did. But now you're saying, I guess that so they're not giving them that option. That option's off the table.
They're not giving them the option because they are so good. That's why. So the UFC didn't know if I was going to be good or not. They didn't know I was going to beat an AD. They didn't know these things. So they were like, you know what? Let's give him the 4. Let's see what happens. See what we'll go from there. With Masvidal, they already know he's a star right now. The other thing as well is they re-up you when you fight someone like a Nate Diaz. Okay, yeah. John Jones, they re-up him as many times as they can because every time he fights and defends his title, it gets increased 3 more fights. So it adds another couple fights onto his contract every time he defends his title because they don't want the champion to leave.
Right.
So, but with Masvidal, every time they give you a big money fight like they did with the Nate Diaz fight and the BMF belt and all this other stuff, that automatically will re-up your contract. Not because it's the BMF title shot, but it's like, look, we just gave you a huge fight. The UFC paid him a ton of money. And now they're like, look, we want a return on our investment like you're talking about. And the return on the investment is you're going to sign this long-term deal. And the long-term deal is this. And so the Masvidal part, I feel like it's because he's been in the game for 16 years. He wants to finally start seeing the real money roll in. He's got a little taste of it with the Nate Diaz thing. I agree
with that.
I understand the argument with Dana and him. I get Dana's side. There's no doubt about it. I understand Dana's side. The John Jones part of it, I don't get. And I'm not a John Jones fan. I never have been. From the all the other stuff that went on outside the cage, as well as, the abuse of steroids or whatever, dick pills, whatever you want to call it. I've never been a John Jones fan, but I understand John Jones' argument right now. I'm tired of beating these guys at 205 because I'm losing my motivation, and I'm also looking bad while I'm doing it now. And he hasn't looked good his last couple of fights. He should have lost to Dominic Reyes. I think a lot of people have said. I thought he lost
Santos wasn't a great fight.
I thought he lost to Santos.
I thought he lost.
And Santos, people need to remember Santos was on one knee after the first round.
Yeah.
So there's no way. I think that his lack of motivation, or maybe it's his lack of, maybe it's lack of not using PEDs. Who knows? But I think it's a lack of motivation. Okay. I think his motivation to fight guys that he knows or thinks he can beat pretty easily is being shown in the cage. His desire to fight Ngannou is someone that nobody else wants to fucking fight. So why not pay him more? Why not? I mean, if he's making $5 million a fight, pay him another $2 million. Pay him another $3 million. Who gives a shit? You're telling me on your profit margins, right? Now I get it. They $4.4 billion. Whatever.
Imagine being in debt $4 billion, and in a big way you're getting that money back is live events, and then all of a sudden you lose live events. Like, imagine that stress. Like, that's gotta be crazy.
I do understand that, but there has been an uptick in pay-per-view buys. There has been an uptick in viewership as well. So either tell him, you can sit him down. I think in a situation in which he's in, Dana should have had a relationship with him already, good enough to say, hey, we're going to sit you down. We're going to have you on. Maybe we'll put you on regular TV. Maybe we won't. Whatever money comes in based off of viewership, we'll pay you off of that. I don't know if you recall, but when Kane fought Dos Santos in his first fight, when he lost,
UFC on Fox,
he had hurt his knee the week before. And they told him, like, look, we're going to make it worth your time for Fox. We're gonna have you fight if you're okay with fighting. He said, yeah, we will pay you your pay-per-view numbers on regular TV. So what did they end up getting? I want to say they ended up getting like 9 million views. It was some astronomical amount of viewership for that show. It was fucking insane.
Yeah, I remember
and it was only one fight on that show. Remember, the whole fight was like 19 seconds.
Yeah.
but it was some astronomical amount of view. And I want to say he was making like a little bit over $2 per pay-per-view buy. So if it was a $9 million view or I think it was like 6 or 9, I can't remember. He made probably 12 or $13 million off that. That was just based off the viewership. That wasn't even his pay. I want to say his pay was like $500,000 or $750,000. That's fucking insane. I think you sat John Jones down and said, look, let's do something like this for one fight, whatever. Ngannou fight, let's make it a start. It's not for a title. So Big John McCarthy and I talk about this all the time on our show, weighing in. We're talking about like, hey, if you're going to do something like this, it's got to be a title shot. But here's the thing. You got to keep Ngannou busy as well. This poor guy's been waiting on the sideline for DC and Stipe to fight forever. So let the guy get the fight in. Let's sell the hype train. Let's get it going, bud. Let's get this thing. We haven't had fights, but let's get the cash money fights going. I see Dana's side on the Masvidal thing, and I'm a huge Masvidal fan. Love it. Been fans of his since, back in the day, Strikeforce days.
Yep.
But to the John Jones part, and like I said, I'm not a fan of John Jones, but I see John's argument. I'm going up to heavyweight. I'm taking a huge chance. My motivation at 205 is bleh. I'm done. I'm bored. I'm bored beating these guys, knowing I could beat them. He hasn't looked the same. Let's do something that sparks his interest. I think it's the motivation. I think if you put him in the cage with Ngannou, you're going to see a reinvigorated John Jones, and you're going to see the old flashy one that does things that he hasn't been doing for the last 4 or 5 fights. Yeah. And that's scary to think. I want to see the spinning elbows again. I want to see the takedowns. I want to see the foot sweeps. I want to see all those things that we know John Jones can bring. The problem is, though, is he has no motivation to do it. And I think the argument with Dana White is how is this your champion for so damn long? But yet you guys are having fucking media beefs. Are you kidding me?
But that's the question that goes both ways. So maybe it's my ignorance on the details because I don't know the details and I can't obviously argue the facts here. But John Jones, this is not his first contract. He's had multiple contracts with UFC. Yeah. He knows how it goes. He knows how it works. Why did he sign this new contract then? That's the question.
It's not signing a new contract. His contract extends he'll get a new contract, but his contract extends every 3 fights or every time he defends his title. It keeps continuing to extend. So no
he
matter
didn't have a choice to not go with the new deal that Dana said. Is what you're saying?
Yeah, but he's not talking about the deal that he had to fight the guys that he's fighting. He's fine with that money.
So they basically made the deal, and then the Ngannou thing came up, and that's when John was like, yes. Whoa, this is a fucking huge fight.
Yes, it is.
And it is a huge fight. I'll give you that.
So to approach it like John McCarthy's approaching it, it's a big fight.
Yeah.
And for it to be a big fight, let's negotiate that fight outside your deal and come back. Now, Dana's been on the record to say like, look, it's a hard sell to say that I need the gate money. And I understand that, but there has been an uptick in viewership and there has been an uptick in pay-per-view buys and things like that. But the Conor gate is what, $18-19 million. Yeah. Okay. The John Jones gates are probably, I'd say, around 8 to 9 to maybe even 10 million, something like that. Maybe they're less, maybe they're more. I don't know. But that's something I don't know. But in that area, that right there would probably pay for at least John Jones, and then the rest of it can go through pay-per-view buys and money that came in from endorsements and sponsors and things like that. My point is John Jones is trying to do something in going up to weight and going up to heavyweight to fight the scariest guy in the heavyweight division. You got to tip him. You got to tip him some more money, man. You got to give him some more money.
But the thing is, he doesn't have to. So that's the thing. Like, what does John Jones do?
You're right. He doesn't have to. And John also doesn't have to go to heavyweight and fight that fight.
What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he's going to settle and just make his normal money and just to get paid that kind of money after this whole this stall out? Or do you think he's going to – who do you think is going to cave in, honestly?
I think that John is going to – John's probably financially – I would imagine he's financially okay. He's living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I mean, things don't cost that much.
That extra $5 million. There's a lot of extra money, dude.
If he's making $5 million a fight – shit, he can retire now. He's fucking living in Albuquerque, New Mexico. He'll be fine. This is what I think happens. I think he stays at 205. I think he's vacated. He sounds like he's vacated the title. And he'll just fight whoever at 205 and just walk through these guys and be like, whatever. And I think he'll have lazy, boring performances. And when his contract is up, he will just move on.
It's
He'll go
tough,
somewhere
man.
else.
I mean, it's tough because that's from his standpoint, and then from the UFC standpoint, they especially in this no audience having, no live gate having era that we're in right now with coronavirus, they kind of need that John Jones and Ngannou fight, because to be honest with you, I'm with you 100% on John Jones. I'm not that interested in him fighting anymore. Like, I'm really not. I really don't look forward to a John Jones fight. If he's not fighting DC, I'm not that interested. Now, Ngannou is one guy that I'm very interested in seeing him fight, because now you're looking at a John Jones that has to show up like the old John Jones. And if he shows up like he showed up against Santos and Reyes and all this stuff, he's going to get knocked out, or could get knocked out, and it could be brutal. And then you could see a champion who's never been beat absolutely just flattened. So it's like, that's a fight that's interesting to everybody. So on the UFC side, it's like, they might have to cave in too, because they need that fight, I think, especially with Conor, running now, and Khabib's tied up, and, we got DC and Stipe, but like, other than that, it's like, they kind of need that fight. So it's like, it's weird how this is going to end. I'm very curious to see how they make this happen, because.
Well, here's the thing. You just lost the only guy that I really cared to see fight at 125 and 135 is Henry Cejudo. You just lost him. So he's gone. He's retired. Basically vacated both titles.
Yeah.
He's gone. Who's the other guy that just retired? Someone else just retired.
Who was it?
So Henry retired. Then you have what's it called? Khabib's gonna fight sometime in September, but you have that weight class now is on hold for a little bit because that fight's not gonna happen until September. Who else do you have? You have John Jones basically vacating the title, and
Connor's gone.
I don't want to see a lackluster performance by him, which is what we're going to continue to see, even if he's not champion or is champion, whatever. He doesn't care. I think he's going to fight out his contract. If he just signed a new contract and deal, he'll just fight it out, and I think he'll bounce. Masvidal, I think with Masvidal, they'll get it worked out with him.
Yeah,
I think they'll figure out a way to get it worked out with him. That's
Masvidal's
my opinion on that.
He's going to want the money. I mean, Masvidal is in a situation where. I'm with you about the Dana part on that. Like Masvidal is in a situation where he's not the highest ranked guy, but he's a draw, and so he wants to make the money. So I just feel like that's going to get worked out. I don't know, like I said about John Jones, because he's got so much money and he's obviously made so much and done so much. But and Masvidal is doing great too. I love Masvidal, but I think that's going to get worked out. I think he's going to come back and they're going to do some kind of settlement there and get him a fight.
Yeah, I mean, you got to think, though, you have a lot of uncertainty right now amongst that whole promotion with all their title holders. You've got at 125 is vacant, which they're fighting. Benavidez is fighting for the title here again coming up. That's as much as I'm a Benavidez fan. It's one of those fights that I feel like that they're shoving down people's throats, and fans are like, eh.
And Aldo and Jan's fighting, and like Jan is a fucking badass fighter, but not a lot of people know who he is.
No one knows who he is. And when we're having this conversation, everyone's like, oh, well, he's fighting Jose Aldo. Look, the reason why he's fighting Jose Aldo for the title is because no one knows who Peter Yan is, and they need some name recognition with that. Yeah. Like, do I think maybe Moraes should have got the fight? Yeah. Do I think maybe Sterling should get the fight? Yeah. But if you put those two guys for a title shot, no one's going to give a fuck. No one's going to care. They're going to click on that and be like, who are these guys again? Huh? I think if Peter beats Jose, it adds more name recognition to him. Look at how much Max Holloway catapulted into the prime time after he beat Jose Aldo.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's true. Like, everyone's like, oh, man, Max is like the greatest of all time in that weight class. Da-da-da. Whether he is or not, that's irrelevant. But they used Jose Aldo as someone for him to go on. Same way with Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
Sure, Conor had the star power, but he also had a whole country behind him.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a big difference. Like I've said this before, Bisping, Dan Hardy had whole countries behind them. Okay, GSP, whole country behind them. These people from other countries, their whole country supports them because they haven't had champions in those eras. Now that they have, those countries support them. Beating someone like Jose Aldo made Conor's star power go up. Same thing with Max. Hawaii. Boom, Max Holloway fighting for the title against the fucking legend, Jose Aldo. Then he beats him twice, catapults him into stardom. That's all they're looking for, Peter Yan to beat Jose Aldo, to catapult him into stardom. When Peter Yan becomes champion, if he does become champion, which I think he's got a tough task in front of him, if he becomes champion, Then you have him fight Sterling. Okay, this is going to be a good fight. Everyone knows who Peter Yan is now. He's the champion.
Right.
Now we can have these guys fight. Now we don't have to worry about just having Jose Aldo fight if we need him to. That's the way this promotion game works, man. People need to realize that and understand Dana's not fucking stupid. Dana's been in the game a long time, man. There's been a lot of learning lessons along the way.